What's good, people? We're back and we're back on talking about Arsenal on the Arsenal Roundabout. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Colleen. Colleen, how you doing, darling?
Very, very well. As I'm sure most of the people who are going to be watching this, we're sitting from a place of high judgment. We're on our soapboxes a little bit.
Absolutely, we are, man. And it's a strange place to be. But what I will say is we need to milk it as best we can because it's very highly unlikely that come May we will remain top of the league. But you never know with this Arsenal side. It's looking good at the moment, Colleen. I can't lie. But first of all, before we get into Arsenal, how are you? I know you've been on Football Terrace. You're getting your name out there, out and about, looking at you on socials. People, make sure you go and follow Colleen's content on Miss Colleen Wills. How's things going with you in the football YouTube world?
It's going okay. I've only really just started it since the beginning of the year. It's kind of gone quite quickly, actually. But no, quite enjoying it, and it makes it all the better when Arsenal doing well. So that's okay. Barring the to be fair, barring that wasn't fun. I did have to pop on a Tottenham shirt, so that wasn't great. But outside of that,
Yeah, I see that. I see that. Which was, listen, never make a bet like that about having to wear a Tottenham shirt because, if that ever comes true with me, I'll tell you that now. That's going to be a tough one to take. But no, listen, pleasure having you on and thanks for joining me. I want to talk a little bit about yesterday and then Arsenal in general. And when I look at where potentially we are still lacking to try and keep up with Man City, because I think Man City are the ones to beat at the moment. I know that we're top of the league, but Haaland and De Bruyne look scary to me. So I think they're going to be very difficult to beat this season. But at the moment, Arsenal are difficult to beat, Colleen. And I think what we're playing at the moment is looking at what Saliba and Jesus have done to take us to that next level. I think that's been really impressive. I think also there seems to be a little bit of an understanding of a style of play now finally over the last couple of years. I've doubted where we were going with that. I think we finally got that now. I think those triangles we're seeing over the left and the right are looking really good. And we're certainly forming partnerships now over in midfield and at the back. And I think what Jesus has done is allowed not only us to have a centre forward now finally, but also I think what he's done is he's raised the level of Martinelli. And I think that's been huge. So what's been your thoughts so far of Arsenal and in particular yesterday's battering against Brentford?
God, my thoughts on Arsenal. Where does one begin and end?
Yeah, I know. There's so much going on, isn't there?
I mean, every time someone's asked this question, I always point back to Ramsdale after the Bournemouth game away. He came out and said that Jesus and Zinchenko have elevated our level mentally. The way they've come in and the mentality that they've set, he said that they've elevated it and the hurt that they had from last season. So I think Jesus in particular has been not just in terms of his output, GA. I think the whole style of play that we have at the front, and as you've mentioned, how he interlinks with Martinelli, we just look like a completely different side offensively. And it's almost like confidence has bred its way through the team. And that's also not to say that there hasn't been a lot of coaching across the last 2 years to help that, especially defensively. And Saliba, what a Rolls Royce of a defender. I mean, it's worth the wait. And there's not much you can say. I mean, there's a few things that we could go on that we'll probably touch on a bit later in terms of how we can catch City and where we might be lacking. But at the moment, I don't think we could have asked for a better start to the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think when we look at what we've done so far, the biggest 3 games for me were the away games against Brentford, obviously yesterday, Bournemouth and Palace. Because they're 3 games, that I think we would have lost a few seasons ago, and we were losing a few seasons ago. Yeah. Only last season we lost to Brentford and to Palace. And when Bournemouth were in the Premier League, previously under Eddie Howe, we used to always struggle against them away from home. So I think it proves where we've improved and the progress you've shown as a team. And I think, Colleen, what we're seeing now in particularly this first 11 is some stature. I don't think we've always had physical presence like Saliba and Gabriel, of course. Xhaka's always been there, but he was the only real one for me. Partey's now come in. Tomiyasu, Ben White. Jesus has got a lot of strength for a small guy. I think we're now seeing some of these players that are seen more as hard men than perhaps we have seen in the likes of the Fabregases and the Wilshires and Ramseys that were quite lightweight previously in midfield. And at the back, we had, let's be honest, a bunch of absolutely mediocre clowns, in my opinion, sometimes the Mustafis of this world, So I think that's improved massively, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we've gone through some stuff the last 10, 15 years as Arsenal fans. But it's nice to see that evolution in the squad. It has been really nice to see, especially as you've mentioned the physicality, and you wouldn't expect it from Jesus as you've touched upon. But I've loved the evolution of the way Arteta's played in terms of when he first came in with the squad that he had, which wasn't his squad, obviously. We were much more defensive, playing on the counter. And then we started, season by season, we've started to evolve. And now it feels like we're actually seeing a team that are playing a way that Arteta actually wants to play. So it gives me much more optimism to kick on. And I think we could all say that it's a bit of a shame that we didn't get 7 from 7 and that we lost the United game. But in my mind, I never want to lose a game, but we will lose a game. And of course, you don't want to lose to United. But my thinking was, okay, this is where we'll see where Arsenal have turned a corner in terms of mentality. Because last season, once we lost a game, it was 3 in a row. So it was like, okay, can we pick ourselves up? I don't really count the Europa League fixture in that just because of the massive squad rotation and the opposition. No disrespect to Zurich, but Brentford last season, we had a bit of a disaster class there. Coming off the back of a loss from United, seeing us go out to Brentford and comprehensively win, dominate, which not many, I don't think any team really does that. Brentford away, the only team that's come close is when City won 2-0 in January or February of this year. So that's what I was looking forward to seeing, and they gave me an answer, and I couldn't be more happier with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And last season we lost in chunks. Like we started off the season terribly against Brentford and then lost to City and Chelsea. And after going on a few games, winning the games like Norwich and Burnley and people like that, we should be beating. We then come up against Liverpool and lost. Then Man United and lost, and then Everton and lost. And it's like we've lost in a big chunk again. And then what do? We go on a nice little convincing run. Then we lose to Forest and we lose to City on New Year's Day. And we can't beat Burnley at home. And it's like we're not seeing that this season. We're seeing a few goals that we go down, we hit back straight away. Then what happens against Man United? We get disappointed. We naive, in my opinion, lose the game, and then we bounce back against Brentford. And that needs to continue, Colleen, because what I didn't want to see was Arsenal struggle against Brentford, and then we're going into the North London derby and Liverpool. That's going to be hard. And if you've lost 2 games going into that, the momentum's not there. You've got all the pressure on you again. Arsenal get told, oh, they can't make it against big teams, and they're still getting bullied and beaten up. And I'm not seeing that this season. And I still stand by the fact that the manager was naive, and so were the players against Man United at Old Trafford. But at the same time, I've seen some progress in terms of our style of play, the way we're playing, the way we're scoring goals. I think the football, more importantly, Colleen, is really nice to watch. I know a lot of people say that don't matter. Yeah, I'm one of those. It don't really matter if you win games of football. But actually, if you have the preference, you'd always want it to be attractive to watch and entertaining. And I think that's what Arsenal are doing this season that's different. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the players that have impressed you this season. You've mentioned a couple of the newer signings that have come in. Is there anyone this season that you've seen massively improve?
I mean, I think initially, as soon as you say that, you think of Xhaka. I think that's kind of a controversial one, because some people are saying, well, he's always been this good, he's just been underrated. And there's other people are saying that, okay, the evolution of him going into a 6 rather than having to sit back and be a bit of a car crash at times, in my opinion. I think his evolution into that role and maturity within Arsenal this whole time he's been here, I think we need to give credit for. I think he's one of 2. I think it's him and Rob Holding who've been here since Arsene Wenger, who's come through different systems, different coaches, quite an unstable time at Arsenal. So I think he needs to be given props for that. I think all the new signings have come in with a bang. I mean, I'm going to exclude Matt Turner from that. Yeah, and I think Xhaka's gonna. I'm trying to think, because everyone's been great, and without going to the obvious. And yeah, I think Martinelli as well has kicked on. He was someone who I thought this season might come too early for him to click, but with Jesus coming in, I think that's only helped his development.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the 2 that I'm looking at are on that left-hand side with Xhaka and Martinelli. I think have improved massively this season. I've not seen Martinelli start the season like this because he's never normally been given that chance. It's normally been last season with Smith Rowe, and then you see other players before that. I've been really impressed with him, and I think you're right. Jesus has definitely lifted him. But the player that I have to hold my hands up for is Granit Xhaka, because for 6 seasons now, I've had doubts about him. I don't like his discipline, or his lack of discipline, should I say. I don't think he's done much for the team in terms of how we're driving forward. But this season, it's the complete opposite of that. Touchwood, he ain't got sent off yet. And also, he's driving us forward with his left foot. It looks absolutely superb. And yesterday, for me, he was head and shoulders a man of the match for me. I thought he was outstanding. And I think what we're seeing now with Granit Xhaka is someone who looks settled and someone that looks happy. And I don't think he's ever really done that at Arsenal, if I'm honest with you. And he's been here long enough. El Nini's actually the longest serving Arsenal player in the squad by 6 months because we bought him 6 months before Xhaka. Then obviously we got Rob Holding and the others that you mentioned. But I think what I look at with Granit Xhaka at the moment is someone who's playing good enough to be in the first 11. And I always wanted an upgrade. I still stand by it, to be fair, Colleen. I still think we need somebody else in there as well as Granit Xhaka. But if he's playing the way he's playing at the moment, I'm really pleased with it. And I think with him and Martinelli and also Zinchenko and Tierney, it's really allowed our left-hand side to flourish because I always thought it was a little bit lopsided last season. We've always had a half-decent left side and then a bang average right side. Of late, it's been the other way around, and Tomiyasu and Saka proved last season, along with Ødegaard, that right-hand side was strong. This season, it's kind of flipped over again, and we've got a really strong left-hand side. So I think we've managed to get that balance a little bit right now. We've always been a little bit lopsided as far as I'm concerned with Arsenal, and I just wanted to get your... Yeah, I just wanted to get your kind of opinions on what you've seen differently with our right and left-hand side in terms of some of our new signings like Zinchenko and obviously Ben White coming in that position at right back.
I mean, it's nice to see that when going into the Brentford game where you have Tierney starting because Zinchenko's out, that the whole world's not crumbling. 12 months ago, if our starting fullbacks were out, we were pulling our hair out. So that
100.
is a in itself. And I think people have been a little bit harsh, especially on Tierney, I think. Well, I say people, what you see on social media, because Zinchenko started so well. But I think him and Kieran can play left back, but they play two different roles when it comes to playing left back.
Agreed.
Zinchenko's obviously much more comfortable drifting in and being more of an inverted left back than Tierney is. But they both offer good things to us offensively and defensively. So depending on who we're playing, you can switch up. I mean, a lot of the time, Zinchenko's heat map looks very similar to Xhaka's. And I think that's all part of Arteta wanting to create these overloads on the left and right. If you look at the right-hand side, Ben White being able to keep Tomiyasu out. Now, whether that's just to make sure, his legs aren't still made of, paper or anything, just to ease him back in, is another story. But Ben White has done quite well defensively. Okay, he's not a complete attacking right back, but he's done the job of what you expect a right back to do on the basics very well. So it gives us this kind of flexibility, especially when we push forward. A lot of the time, you'll just see two of our centre backs on the halfway line, and we've created massive overloads going forward. And that's something Arteta has said back when he first started, that that's what he wants to do. We just never had the squad to do it, and we have flexibility in terms of good depth on those two sides, where you can have Tommy or Ben White. And a shout out to Cedric. I've got a little soft spot for him, but I know he's not.
Do you?
I do have a little soft spot for him, but I know defensively he's lacking.
Oh yeah, he's not my cup of tea, man.
And similarly on the left, that we have a depth there, and we have two players that are not their same spot, but not necessarily like for like. It gives us much more creativity and different kinds of combinations that we can do depending on who the opposition is. So I think it's great where it is right now.
Yeah, it's finally nice to have some strength in depth in those positions, but we'll come on to why I believe we haven't got strength in depth in everybody's position in a minute. But I do believe at the fullback area, and particularly at centre-back, we're really good, and it's looking really good for me. I think when Tomiyasu's fit, I really like him as a right back. I think Ben White's been exceptional this season when he's come in and taken that place, because for me, it was a doubt in my mind that he could play there long term, but I think he's shown enough in the first 7 games that he's got enough discipline and he can go forward, but also defensively he's really good. I think what Ben White's done to improve his game as well was aerially, because when he first started, he looked like he couldn't head a ball. Certainly that doesn't look to be the case now. And I think with Tomiyasu, who's also had a brilliant start of his Arsenal career when he's fit, has always been good and strong in the air. So I think that's why I preferred Tomiyasu there. You're interested what you said, though, about the left-back position, because I don't think Mikel Arteta knows at the moment who he wants to play there long-term. And I think that's a good thing, because the competition is so good at left-back between Tierney and Zinchenko. Now, Kieran Tierney is my favourite player. Absolutely love him. I love Saka and Martinelli. And I've got to be honest, Saliba's going to be put in that bracket if he carries on as well. He's been sensational. But I look at what Kieran Tierney does, and it epitomises everything I want to be when a player plays for Arsenal. And that's a lot of that is off the field. I think sometimes because of those attributes, his leadership, his winning mentality, professionalism, kind of takes away how good he is on the pitch. And I think people sometimes forget that. I think he's been a fantastic player for Arsenal. And when Zinchenko's come in, everybody's now assumed that Tierney's out the team and it ain't going to be good news for him. But he's come in against, I think, Zurich and now Brentford and been one of the best players on the pitch. So I must say, I'm a huge, huge fan of what I'm seeing with both of these players. And I think when Zinchenko does come back, it will be interesting to see what Mikel Arteta does. But Colleen, I have to be honest with you, I can't say that about every position. Like there's still so much, so many gaps in this team, in my opinion, apart from the first 11. So I wanted to get your opinions before I go into it about where you think we're still potentially short. And more importantly, some of the players that just can't get injured this season because it will be a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, as much as we were praising the fullbacks, I think it's the opposite for up front. You know, there's not really a great replacement there for Saka. I mean, I know Vieira can play on the right, and I've not seen it in the Prem, so I can't judge it like that. But I know he can play there, but it's not really ideal. Again, the drop in quality when Jesus, if he's out, because for example, he's on 4 yellows. He could potentially pick up a card in the North London derby and be out for Liverpool. That means Nketiah is probably going to start front unless we change it up completely and have Martinelli through the middle or something. I think the drop in class there is a bit much, but I also have a bit of an agenda on Nketiah. I think he's got more to prove to me. So I'm sure some people will say it's fine. And of course, in the midfield, we've seen it. Lokonga, I think he's not a 6 yet. I don't think he's grown into that. He's just not there yet. And that's nothing against him. He's just still very raw. He's still very young. That's not his fault. But we've seen when Partey's out, and we saw it at United, and I'm not putting United loss on him, but it's not great. And I know every team has potentially gaps or be like, oh, I wish we could have strengthened a little bit more here. But I do think offensively, in the midfield and especially on the right-hand side, we could be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, see, I agree with you. And, you know, I wanted to title this something along the lines of how close are we to Man City? Because at the moment we are in the league. I don't think that's going to stay long term because of our drop off in some of our squad depth. I think that we've got players that can back up players. That's not the issue. We've got enough players. You know, if you registered all of our players, we'd be able to put a team out of 25 players. But I would say that 15 of them are good enough. And the other 10 are probably question marks. So, for example, when you're having to bring on a 15-year-old, it's a great story. But actually, or not have to, but when you decide to bring on a 15-year-old, it's a great story. But is that the person we want to be having on our bench 7 games into the Premier League season? Not ideally. It's not. When you've got 5 subs this season and only 2 or 3 of them are actually going to come on and change the game, is that really what you need? When Smith Rowe is back, he'll be on there. Fabio Vieira, I think, will be a good sub option this season. And maybe Marquinhos as well as Eddie. There's your 3 or 4. But how many of those do you guarantee goals? How much faith do you have in those to come on and completely change the game? And I think that's where my concern is and my question mark is. And of course, those 4 players can come on and start banging in goals and we could all be like, wow, this has been brilliant. But that's yet to be seen. So I think when we look at strength in depth, people always say, Christ, do you want 3 players for each position? No, I just want 2. I just want 2 players that are good enough for each position. And at the moment, we've got 2 players for each position, but some of them aren't good enough. We saw last season what happens if you bring in Cedric, Elneny, Lokonga, Eddie long term. It ain't good enough. So what we need to make sure of is that we're having to be clever with these 15 players that we have got that are good enough. And I think that could be a bit of an ask. I'm a bit surprised we left ourselves short personally again in the summer. And I think that with a World Cup year, we're going to be praying for that January transfer window if we get 1 or 2 knocks. Jesus, you know, you mentioned if he gets another yellow card in the North London derby, he's out of the Liverpool game and we've got Eddie up top. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard now. And, you know, as far as Man City are concerned, Colleen, they're looking strong. I think they're definitely going to win this title, in my opinion. I think Spurs and Arsenal are looking good to compete with them at the moment. Whether they can keep that long term or not is a different story. But I wanted to get your opinions on the difference between what Arsenal and Manchester City are doing and where you think they're so far ahead of us.
I mean, one of the answers is Haaland, just because of that whole clutch. He's just a whole subject himself. And that's not to knock Jesus. It's just a different type of forward that we have. Haaland's not having to do all the interlink play that Jesus is doing and getting in the thick of it. He's just very much a clutch and probably one of the best finishers in Europe at the moment. So there's that factor. But that doesn't mean that we're down and out. But Man City have strength and depth. They have anyone who comes in and out, you don't even notice the difference. It's like clockwork. You could barely even realize. And it's not to put a knock on some of our players that we have in terms of, your Nketiahs and potentially Marquinhos if he does come in. We just haven't seen it. Whereas these are proven. They can come in and out of a system and you wouldn't know the difference. It's very much a system. Whereas with Arsenal, because we don't have that depth there, we're not quite there. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just makes our jobs a little bit harder considering all the competitions that we are in. And I'm sure Arsenal are looking to come away with silverware this season and being back in the Champions League. So you're right. We have to be a bit cleverer where we see how we can manage this season. Whereas City, I don't really think managing comes into it. I think they're probably the only squad in the league where they're probably like, we're a bit short here. And maybe if you're a City fan, you might be ultra into it, like, oh, well, actually, da, 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 da. But I think that's the main difference there. And I guess with City, they can come back from behind. That's not to say that we haven't, because we did against Fulham, but we don't have the... we've not done it so many times where we can say, oh, Arsenal can definitely come back and have that hallmark of champions. Do you know what I mean? We've not seen that yet, whereas City have. So let's see. It's not to say that we couldn't give them a good run for it, but there are a few areas where you're like, okay, if it doesn't happen, we know why, sort of thing.
Yeah, 100. Listen, I still think we're going for a Champions League spot. I'm not getting carried away. There's people in the chat. I can't see it now. Someone was asking me, do you still think we're going to come fifth? I tipped us to come fifth this season because I felt that we didn't do enough in the summer. And I felt that Chelsea and Liverpool were going to have a better start. And I still think that they can turn their season around 7 games in. So I'm not going to start saying that Arsenal are now going to finish second just because it's looking rosy. I still need to see this team stay fit, for one. And I still need to see that we're going to be able to compete in all these competitions that I believe we should be competing in. So I'm not going to get too carried away like some. Some people in the chat will be really excited, and I love that. I love the fact we're excited and want to be going for a title and all this stuff. But I just need to...
in N5 for the boys, Dan. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. This is it, man. There's a lot of people that get carried away. But listen, I get it. I'm on with it. And I think the way we're playing at the moment is superb. But what I won't do is start to say that Arsenal are going to win the league, because I'm not deluded. We're a really good side at the moment. We're a great outfit. There's a lot of twists and changes. There's a lot of games to come. I think we've got 9 games to play in October. That's going to hurt us big time with our squad depth. So it's going to be interesting. But I wanted to ask you about Arteta, because he's a manager that's kind of divided opinion between a lot of Arsenal fans. Some Arsenal fans don't trust the process under the Kronkes. Some of the fans are starting to. And some of the fans love everything about the Kronkes and Arteta and think that we're going to win the league with him. So where do you stand with him, man? Where are you at?
Oh, God. I mean, with Arteta, I have to say, I'm not one to call for a manager to be out, but at the beginning of last season, you must have been a visionary if you were still Arteta in after those 3 losses. And I know there was a big context around it, but I just was not feeling it, was not happy. And then as the season progressed, despite collapsing and not getting top 4 when we should have, I was still like, you know what? I'll give him this summer and see. Let me just see. I think I am still with him, but that's not to say that if he doesn't get top 4 this season, he has to go. I'm not with him through thick and thin in terms of like life or death. If he doesn't get top 4 this season, I think it's time to part with him, in my opinion. And with the Kronkes, I think it's a similar thing where until we get a Prem, until we're consistently challenging again, I'm still on them, because it's only in recent times they've started to invest, they've started to wheel out the good PR. But until we start consistently challenging for the title, until we get to that level under them, the jury's still out on them for me. I wouldn't say, I don't trust them. I was going to try and be nice, but no, I don't completely trust them.
Listen, I think that's calm, because why would anybody trust the Kronkes at the moment? Why would they? They've been here for a long time. We've not done anything at all. I think with trusting Arteta, it's believing in him more than anything, because he's got some attributes I really like. He's got some attributes I really don't like. And I feel that it has to be Champions League football this season, like you. Otherwise, I think it's time to move on and try something different. I don't think that will happen. I think Arteta's here to stay whatever. I think even if we come 7th this year, they'll still keep him, the Kronkes, because they like him and he's here. This is their project. You know what I mean? So they've gone for it. Some people are liking it. Where is this? I think it's Travorelli. Here we go. So once he starts winning trophies, I can get excited. But Travorelli changed the culture. He's won that trophy. Has Chaka playing well? Chaka playing well trophy. Is that a trophy? I don't know. Maybe it is. 18 points from 7 games. Really good. Still not enough. Has it won us a league? No. Have we got in the Champions League? No. Come on, man. Like, let's actually be real about this. It's 7 games in. It's not all like forget about what's happened in the last 3 years. Not 3 games, by the way, 3 whole years. So we've got to be calm. I think what we do is sometimes with Arsenal, we lose our heads. And then what happens is people like that come in and start getting excited and then go quiet and disappear from the chats when we lose to Newcastle and Spurs and throw it away. This is what happens all the time, man. We get this from a lot of Arsenal fans. Keep your heads. We know it can go wrong. At the moment, it's great. Enjoy it. Milk it. We're at the top. I don't think it's going to last, but enjoy it. But we need to be real about where we are in this situation, Colleen, don't we?
No, you're absolutely right. He's done good things, Arteta. There's no doubt about it. I think the culture has changed and we're moving in a great direction. But the direction needs to be continue to be up and not stagnate. And I don't know whether maybe you have more of an insight, Dan, but it kind of feels like I saw the Invincibles. I remember Arsenal winning titles. So it's hard to see this kind of transition. So I'm not sure how it is for someone who hasn't seen that, and maybe this feels like it's good. And I think it's very hard for a lot of people who remember these winning days, and people who are older than me who remember it from even in the 90s, and that those great times at Anfield. Those are the kind of days that we want back. So we're on the right road, but we're not there yet. So that's all it is. I think that's the distinction that we're trying to make. Happy, but we can do better, and that's what we want to reach. This isn't the level. This isn't the bar.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when we get top 4, oh, that's it. We've done it. No, we haven't. We'll win a title. Yeah, come on. We're not talking. I've never ever celebrated coming fourth in a league. I never have. And I never will. If we get fourth this year, I ain't going to get celebrations out, Colleen. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to get the champagne out and start getting celebrations going, because that means 3 people have finished above you. And I never celebrated that when I was growing up. I grew up in, the late 80s, early 90s where we were winning everything. And maybe that means I'm spoiled. But that was what I was celebrating. I was too young for 89 and 91, but I celebrated 93 when we won the Cup double against Sheffield Wednesday. I remember celebrating in 94, Parma, and then we started winning league titles under Arsene Wenger, and that was when we were really celebrating. And I remember coming out those grounds in mourning when we come second. So I ain't going to be getting the champagne out when we come fourth now. How does that work? You know what I mean? So that's the way I want to be. I want to be getting back to winning at the best and demanding the best. And that's always the way I've been. I'm not telling people how you should support your football club. If people want to, in the chat say fifth is a great season last season and we're really happy, that's fine by me. Like, if that's what you want to do, but don't have a go at me when I'm not getting excited about coming fifth. Do you know what I mean? That's the way that I see it with this fan base. I think everybody needs to look at what you believe is progress and what you believe is success. And I think success for some of the fans that haven't seen Arsenal win a title is getting top 4 because everyone believes it's a trophy. And I think that's where we still fall short in terms of our lack of ambition and some of our acceptance of mediocrity at times. So I'm with you there 100%. And I'm lucky enough to see Arsenal winning trophies. You're lucky enough to see Arsenal winning trophies, and the Invincible season both of us got to see. The Invincible season, we didn't have a squad of 15. We had a squad of 20 players, at least, maybe even 25, that were all quality. And there was the Fabregas and Van Persie, who then kind of were on the bench of those years. And then Clichy being on the bench, people like that for Ashley Cole. We had great cover in the strength in depth in like Edu and Parla, Carnu, Wiltord. All these players weren't getting a kick. So when you look at it, that's why I'm not too excited by some of the bench players we've got, like Cedric and Lokonga and Eddie, because for me, they're not quite ready. Do you know what I mean? So, but listen, they could prove me wrong. They could all turn up.
If we're challenging this close, stranger things have happened. Strange things have happened, but I take your point. I think we're both aligned on the fact that in 9 times out of 10, it's about the squad and what we're expecting. These kind of freakish seasons don't happen that often. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%, man. At the moment, things are rosy. I really like what I'm seeing, and I think we've seen a lot of progress in certain parts of the game. Still a long way to go in the season, but I want to get your kind of realistic predictions, so to speak, expectations this season for Arsenal. What makes? I tell you what, I'll ask you 2 questions. I'll ask you at the end what you think will happen, and I'll ask you what you think would be a good season for Arsenal and what you think would be a bad season for Arsenal. and then what you think is going to happen. There we go, and we'll end it there.
I mean, bare minimum, Arsenal have to get a trophy. Ideally, the Europa League. It would be nice to get a European Cup. It's not been since what, 94 since we've had a European Cup. I think that's bare minimum plus Champions League, as in qualifying for the Champions League through the league, not through the finishing fifth and getting the Europa League. None of that nonsense. Trophy and finishing in the Champions League. That is my expectation. Top four and a trophy. Europa, ideally. I think we will actually do that. I think we will. And I would think we might finish third just based off of what we've seen. But I think this season is going to be very interesting with the World Cup in the middle, this October fixtures. So I'm not too sure, but I'm still expecting top four. What cannot happen and should not be happening is finishing outside of the top four. It's just now is not. I think we've come too far for us to finish fifth. No, and if we finish fifth in the Europa, I think some people will be content with that. I don't think I would. I know we'd be back in the Champions League, but fifth again, considering how well we've started now.
Is that because we haven't shown progress, you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously context is everything, so we need to see the context of the league. But but the only thing I can think of is like, okay, we don't get top four because we didn't have squad depth. Well, we should have addressed that in the summer then, or January. You know, these kind of things were preventable. It depends on the context, but I don't want us to be finishing fifth again. Fifth. No, no. If we're gonna be these like everyone's saying, be title contenders under the Kronkes and under Arteta. This is too much stagnation for me, and I know there's still context to consider, but I would not be happy if we didn't finish in the top four. And me even saying that we have to finish in the top four, and I know people are saying, yeah, but what if we win the Europa? It's kind of like a back route into the Champions League. I just wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be happy. Of course, I'd be happy for us to win a trophy, but there's just something about that just doesn't sit right with me. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I'm with you. 100% I'm with you. And I'll tell you why I'm with you. If we secure Champions League football, it will be seen as a good season for Arsenal because we're back in the Champions League. If we do that by winning the Europa League and securing a top 3, top 4 position in the league, I think most people will say that we've shown progress. We finished higher than last season and we've won a trophy, which gets you into the Champions League because it's a European trophy, which, let's be honest, is something we haven't won before. We haven't won that competition before anyway. So I look at it like that, Colleen, and think that would be great. If we come fifth, that's a poor season because it means that 4 teams have somehow finished above us. Man City, I'll give you, but Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, United, 3 of those teams as well finishing above us. And let's be honest, at the moment, they look all over the place, apart from maybe Spurs and City. I would say that's a poor season. And I would say that even the Europa League win, although it would keep him his job and he would be in there because we're in the Champions League, I wouldn't say it's shown progress in the league whatsoever. So that for me isn't something to get excited about. I can't get excited about finishing fifth. I'm sorry. I can't get excited about finishing fifth. So for me, top 4 is the absolute minimum. And I think winning that Europa League is something we can do. I think Roma are a good side in that. I think Mourinho knows how to win things. And if Ten Hag can get things right, then Man United have a chance. The problem we've got is when the Champions League teams drop into it. There's going to be a couple of teams I've seen already that are looking like they're playing well, that could drop down into that Champions League, Europa League place and just miss out. Inter Milan are one of them. They're in a group with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. Say again?
Potentially Chelsea, if they're not careful at Milan.
Listen, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Tottenham could even. So you have no idea what's going to happen. But I do feel personally like we are good enough to win that Europa League on paper.
Absolutely.
So I'll be looking to do that. The other thing I want to do though, Colleen. Go on.
So sorry, if we're not good enough in Europa, then why are we even hoping to get in the Champions League? If we're not good enough to win that, we shouldn't even be in the Champions League. So yeah. Yeah,
no, listen, fair comments. But I wanted to ask you quickly about the domestic cups because I think they've been looked at competitions that just get in the way over the last couple of seasons because we've been chasing other things. That really annoys me because I'd love to win both these competitions. The FA Cup for me is the best trophy domestically and always will be. And I think that when you look at what we've done 14 times winning that, to brush it aside against Southampton and Nottingham Forest in the last 2 years has been really disappointing. And I'd like to see us go into the deep stages of both these competitions. Now, I'm not so sure that we have the squad depth to do that in all 4 competitions, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be prioritizing other things and just brushing aside both of those domestic cups. So, wanted to get your opinions about how importantly we should be taking these.
You never brush aside a cup. If you can win a trophy, you never brush it aside. And obviously, these shocks can happen. Like Nottingham Forest, that was awful. But you never brush aside a cup competition. And I don't think Arteta would either. He's won the FA Cup as captain of Arsenal and as a manager. I don't think he would, and I don't think the players should take it for granted either, because apart from Jesus and even Jesus and Zinchenko, no one's won anything in that squad as an Arsenal player, as in considerably. Yes, some of them won the FA Cup, but it's just been one. That's not the winning mentality that we need. And I know that you could throw that back at us because we're like, okay, we don't have the squad depth, so how can we say we're arguing over squad depth, but we expect us to go far in these competitions? If we're the Arsenal, you do not, under any circumstances, be like, oh, it's just the Carabao Cup, it's just the FA Cup. It's just not a thing. And not even to just throw strays at Tottenham, but we're really not Tottenham. A trophy is a trophy. Everyone wants that winner's medal. Everyone wants that extra notch on their belt, and it breeds a winning mentality. So under no circumstances should anyone be brushing aside a trophy. A day out at Wembley, one of the best days as an Arsenal fan, one of the best days.
100% agree with everything you've said, and I think we should try and go for every competition. What's the point of being in a competition if you're not trying to win it? I don't get that, You have to be going for it. So, yeah, I think we've got to try and go for everything this season. For me, a great season would be competing with Manchester City for a title. I think that would be considered a great season. A good season would be securing Champions League football, and a poor season would be losing out on it, and particularly losing out on it trophyless again. So I think we're on the same wavelength there, to be fair, Colleen. Listen, lastly, just before we go, what do you think is going to happen? Talk to me. What do you think is going to happen at Arsenal this season? If I was to say to you, right, there's money, go put it on. Where are Arsenal going to finish, and what we're going to win this season?
Do you know what? You've caught me in an optimistic mood, Dan. I'm not being quite sensible today. I've been quite cocky. I don't know. I think we could be the best of the rest, if I'm being honest with you. I think if Liverpool continue the way they're going, literally, if everyone else continues the way they're going, we could finish second. However, if I was a betting person, I'd be like, okay, Arsenal for third. I think we all comfortably finish in the top 4. And I think I want to say we'll win the Europa, but Arsenal give me a bit of I've got too many European nightmares, so I think we will. I have a feel if I had to bet, third place and probably an FA Cup. It's not what I want, but 2006 Baku, I've still got the scars. Even getting knocked out by Atletico, I've still got a bit of a scar with betting on Arsenal in Europe. But what I want to happen and what I think will happen are two different things. But that's what I think will happen. Third and FA Cup.
Do you know what? That wouldn't be a shocker of a season, to be fair. It'd be disappointing in Europe, but we'd be in the Champions League and we won a trophy. So, do you know what? Most people would probably take that. I said that I think we'd finish 5th and win the Europa League at the start of the season. I'm going to change my league position now because of the fall off from Chelsea and Liverpool, and I'm going to say that we're going to sneak 4th and win the Europa League. Yeah, I don't think we're going to win the FA Cup or the League Cup because I think we're going to go for Europe and champ top 4, and I think we'll probably bomb out to somebody. I don't know who. The reason I'm not going to go for third or higher is because I think Man City are going to walk it. I think Conte is going to do enough to get a crap Tottenham team, by the way, over the line and finish second because they just know how to win because Kane and Son keep scoring and he knows how to keep that defence sorted not to lose games. I think Tottenham will come second, and I think it will be Liverpool pick their form up. Klopp's too good to come outside the top 4.
Really?
Man. No chance. Yeah, I think he'll get third. I think Arsenal will sneak 4th ahead of Chelsea and Man United. Potter and Ten Hag have got a big job to do, and I think that we're just a little bit ahead of them because our squad looks a lot more balanced and a lot more settled. So if it wasn't for that and Tuchel was still there with, a team that was firing, then I might put Chelsea in the top 4, which was obviously before a ball was kicked. I expected Tuchel to be taking Chelsea forward. I love Graham Potter, by the way. I think he's a wicked manager. I just don't know that Chelsea will settle quick enough, and I think United still have too much to do. So I'm going to go with that, and top 4 and win Europa.
do you think you change your mind if, in the circumstance, we beat Tottenham and Liverpool our next 2 Prem games? If we were to beat them both, do you think your stance would stay the same?
I think I'd start to question myself over why I had doubt about why we wouldn't beat big teams like Tottenham and Liverpool, because I've seen enough to suggest we can give them a game already. Um, and
If
if we get
winning it.
to I think what would change my mind big time is if that World Cup starts and Arsenal are top of the league. I'm fine with that. I'm happy to say Arsenal comfortably, like you,
Yeah.
in the top 4 and probably comfortably getting third as the worst, behind maybe Tottenham and City. But I think when we look at that, we need to get past October and be in and around second or third place still, for that to happen, or be in and around City. You know what I mean? For me to feel that, because I still feel this October is going to affect us big time. The other thing people forget is before the World Cup, we've got Chelsea and Wolves away. That's not easy. That's not easy at all. Both those games are hard, and obviously Spurs and Liverpool in that big chunk of games as well. So I think it will be difficult, but I also believe that there's confidence and encouragement for how we're playing to know that we can handle it. I won't have confidence if we get to the World Cup and Jesus, Partey, and Saliba are all out injured. I would
God.
struggle then.
Take that
So
jinx. Yeah, now
listen,
before
I'm
it
just saying. I'm
happens.
just
We're
saying.
coming back. We're coming back
Yeah,
here.
this is the problem I've got, Colleen, because people say we won't get 3 injuries at the same time. This is Arsenal. We get injuries a lot. So if we were to get those big names out, 1 or 2 of them, I would then have less faith in us beating the likes of Liverpool and Spurs. But hopefully by the international break, we'll have Erdegaard back, Smith Rowe back, Zinchenko back, and obviously keep a squad fit, and it'll be just El Neni out. So I'm hoping that that's the way it is, and we can have the confidence and keep the momentum going, because I'm really loving this Arsenal side at the moment. And I think personally, if we're winning, then I'm smiling. And the way we're playing is great to watch, man. I can't lie.
Yeah, that's why we can have these kind of
100%.
conversations and be like, oh, I want third, now I want fourth, I want a trophy, this, because things are feeling so good right now that, we're not being like, okay, we might just scrape fourth. So it's a nice progression. It's a nice change from this time last year, put it that way.
Of course, man. Of course. Listen, big up yourself for coming on. Much appreciate it. How can people follow you on social media, Colleen?
There, you can follow me there, but I'm always on the terrace 2-3 times a week as well. But otherwise, you can find me on all socials at that same handle.
Great stuff. Make sure you go follow Colleen on social media, people. You can see her social handle there. Listen, I hope next time we come on, we're still talking this positively and we're still smiling about Arsenal being in and around top of the league. That's all I'm saying. You're always welcome on, by the way. Absolute legend. Love everything about you and how articulate you are and talk facts about Arsenal. It's great to see that. So big up yourself. Make sure you go follow Colleen, people. Guys, we're going to be back. I'm going to try and provide something daily throughout this interlull, as much as I can, get some of the guests on. We'll be back tomorrow night for the Race of the Europe show. Do not miss that one, guys, because Lawless is going to get absolutely cooked, seeing as West Ham are now in a relegation fight, and he said that they were going to be in the top 6 this season. Tobes will be on with me, Lewis will be there, and obviously Dan United would also. And then we've got the best of the rest guys coming on later to talk a little bit about Brighton's new manager tomorrow night. If anyone knows much about him, please let me know, because I don't know much other than he was at Shakhtar before. Yeah, that's all I know. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well, guys. So please make sure you smash a like on your way out. I hit 5K yesterday, thanks to you people. So thank you so much for that. Make sure you keep smashing like and subscribe on this one. Go over and follow Colleen, and we will see you next time, guys. Take it easy.